Hello everyone. I apologize for the intro. I understand that it was quite strange, but I was bored and had the time. Today we will be talking about the First Crusade and knights. Knights in medieval times were warriors that swore loyalty to a noble lord or king. In exchange for their military service, the knights would receive loot from battles, a plot of land, and a place in his liege's court. Knights were more than the average foot soldier, however. They were trained extensively in mounted combat, and were outfitted with the best gear they could get their hands on. In the 11th century, that would be mail armor and a conical helmet. Weaponry would amount to a lance or spear, an arming sword, and a kite shield. A misconception about the knight was that they had always been clad in shining full-plate armor, but that sort of armor didn't exist until at least the 1500s. Knights were expected to follow the code of chivalry, but the code of chivalry was never a true code. There were numerous different takes on the code of chivalry, and it was always rather informal. Originally, chivalry was just the French word for horse soldiery. Eventually, it would become the term used to describe a proper knight. What made a knight chivalrous depended on what people looked for in their knights. Some expected knights to excel not only in combat, but in courtly conduct as well, while others just wished for their knights to be effective in combat. Today, chivalry amounts to being polite, especially towards women. Hence all of the door-holding and ladies first guff. Today, knights still officially exist, though the title of knight no longer holds as much weight as it used to. Some relatively modern knights include Elton John and Sean Connery. But that's enough about knights from me. There are bigger things we need to get to, namely, the First Crusade. Now, the First Crusade happened from 1095 to 1099. The cause of the Crusade was the persecution of Christians in Jerusalem by Islamic rulers. This was made worse when control of the city passed from the Egyptians to the Seljuk Turks. The Byzantine Empire also called for aid against the Turks. In 1095, Pope Urban II called for a crusade to help out the Eastern Christians and to retake the Holy Land. Now, despite what some people may think, the First Crusade was not completely composed of a bunch of religiously zealous peasants with no training or armor. In actuality, the crusade was fought by proper knights and infantry. It just so happened that the religiously zealous peasants got there first. They didn't get very far, though. After the peasants had sufficiently watered the dunes with their collective blood, the actual Crusaders stepped up to the plate in 1096. It was a force of 4,000 mounted knights and 25,000 infantry soldiers that actually started the proper crusade that Pope Urban had called for. This army of 29,000 was led by Raymond of Toulouse, Godfrey of Bouillon, Robert of Flanders, and Beaumont of Otranto. In June 1097, the Crusaders captured the Turkish-held city of Nicaea. This was followed by the Battle of Dorylaeum, where the Crusader army defeated an army of Seljuk Turks. After that, the Crusaders marched to Antioch. After arriving and mounting a 6-month-long siege of the city, the gate of the city was lowered by a traitor within the Turkish forces. The Crusaders then entered and slaughtered thousands of soldiers and civilians. After 6 months of rest, the Crusaders pressed onwards towards Jerusalem. They reached the Holy City on June 7th, 1099. The city was fortified, and so the Crusaders began to build siege towers. On July 13th, the towers were completed and the Crusaders attacked the city. The next day, Godfrey of Bouillon and his men breached the defenses and opened the gate of St. Stephen. Soon the Crusaders captured the city, slaughtering tens of thousands of its citizens. With their quest completed, the Crusaders rejoiced, as they now held the Holy Land. An Egyptian army attempted to retake the city from its new occupants, but despite superior numbers, they were repelled by the Crusaders. The First Crusade was a victory for the Crusaders, as it led to the creation of Crusader states, the 3 major ones being the County of Edessa, the Principality of Antioch, and the Kingdom of Jerusalem. The whole thing was a great bloody mess, though. Countless lives lost on both sides, a great deal of slaughtering non-combatants by the Crusaders, a lot of enslaving of prisoners by the Turks. All in all, it was an unpleasant part of history, but also an interesting one. Thank you all for watching.